for me, it's a lot of negative self-talk
Mhm.
because in my specific life, I have a wonderful support system. Friends, family, I have a husband who's wonderful. Like they all encourage me. So it was really from within. Like it
Okay.
was very much from within. And so that's what I really needed to work on the most was the self-doubt, the
Yeah.
negative self-talk. And I still, it doesn't just go away, but it takes practice to understand that those voices, like you said, come from your survival instincts, whatever your upbringing was, and in whatever way they take shape, because it's different for everyone. They're not you. They're not you talking. They're those survival instincts talking. And so once I finally got it through my head and practiced that and understood that, like, you can acknowledge those thoughts,
Mhm.
but you don't have to listen to those thoughts. That
Yeah.
was critical for me to understand how I can move past them.
Life's too short for bad coffee or bad leadership. I'm Lindsay Yellen, executive leadership coach, coffee enthusiast, and former ad VP turned believer in leading from a place of possibility. On Unfiltered Leadership, we skip the buzzwords and dig into the messy, human, and powerful side of leadership with real conversations and practical takeaways. Now grab your mug. Let's dive in. What does it really take to bet on yourself and win? This week, I'm joined by Julie Roth, a brand strategist, copywriter hybrid who helps businesses find their why in words. Julie was once a coaching client of mine turned into a close friend, and I have been lucky to watch her journey as she's made the leap from agency life into freelancing. She shares how she learned to trust herself, to quiet those very loud, pesky voices of self-doubt, and step fully into possibility. Here's our conversation. Hello, hello. Hi, Julie. I am so happy you're here. Welcome to Unfiltered Leadership. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
You're talking to us from sunny LA?
Always sunny here. Yes.
Not always sunny up here. And I got to find out what's in your mug today.
Well, it is August at the time of this recording.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be a nice latte. I make it whole milk, easy,
Easy.
just simple.
I am opposite today. And I have, first of all, I like to talk about, highlight the mugs. This is a Mary Carroll mug, who's an incredible ceramics artist out of Portland. And I'm actually drinking peppermint tea
That's
because
very unlike you. Okay.
very unlike me, but it's like later in the day. And you know what? Pregnancy in me has turned all of my coffee habits upside down. So this is just a different era for me, and I'm okay with that. So, Jules, I want to start our conversation today. So, usually when I'm chatting, so for those listening, Julie and I, we go back, we met in like 2021? Just three? Was it 2023?
I
3 years
wish.
ago. 3 years ago, 2022. Either way, a few
Really?
years ago.
Yes. A few years ago.
And we got connected through mutual connections through Ronnie. And we became quick connections, like kindred spirits, through actually working together. You looking for some coaching, which we can talk more about later as you wish. But also when you were ended up navigating a really big transition that we didn't necessarily anticipate when we first met and talked about. So I normally at the end of our podcast talk and ask our guests, hey, when was a time when you in your life chose possibility over fear, like went through life from a place of possibility? But I actually want to kick off our conversation by asking you that question because I feel like your story is a really beautiful one that relates to this topic. And I think the listeners deserve to hear it.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think you're missing a big piece of our connection, which is we are both nice Jewish girls from the suburbs of Chicago
That too. And from advertising, should
and
also
in
say,
advertising.
of course.
So when when I was in the search for a coach, that was really kind of that was a real alignment piece for me. Yeah. I feel like
Told you it's kismet.
yes, absolutely. But I would say, yeah, a lot of our work together, of course, we can also talk about the expectations I had for the work and then what was the reality.
That's probably a good thing to touch on at some point. But yes,
Yeah, yeah. But I would say we started our work together. I was at a certain point in my career where I was starting to feel some sort of inflection, some sort of like need for growth and change, but I really wasn't sure what that was. And so I was toying with the idea of going from full time to freelance, being a freelance creative, This is a very new idea to me. I'm very much a 9 to 5 kind of gal. But it was something that I did want to try without fear. And so I think I learned through our work together to connect my head to my heart, meaning I knew in my head that I had the experiences, the support system, the resources to really try this. I just needed to like get over that fear hump and sort of prove to myself in my heart that I could do it. So it was like connecting those two pieces and choosing again, of course, that possibility over fear that I think started to make me confident in the choice to try it.
And I'm curious, like, what was a possibility that you were looking at, or like the possibility that was driving you, but what was the fear that was, also maybe hindering or like poking its head out?
Well, this might feel really simple, because people know what freelance means, of course. But I think my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to get work and that there would be crickets. And how the heck am I going to be able to put my name out there and promote myself? But that possibility was the exact flip of that. I really had to go into it. I knew with a mindset that was, I will get work. I will build a client base. I will be able to make these connections and use the people that I know and beyond to build relationships even further. So, and of course, it wasn't easy as flipping a light switch, as easy as flipping a light switch, but I knew that's what I was trying to go for and like be solid enough to not only start with that mindset, but sustain that mindset as well.
Yeah, that's actually like what I was like percolating for me too was it's like you can kind of have moments, and even like in coaching, when you're in a session with a coach, you can come to a realization, you can come to a place of empowerment, the aha, the get the mantra, the like the mindset perspective shift. But the real work happens in between when you have to be accountable to that because the other voices can get so much louder, so much more persistent. And sometimes also when you're doing big, scary changes, they don't just come from your own mind. They can come from people around you who are projecting their own fears onto you. So how did you navigate that? What was that like for you?
I mean, well, this was like a weeks long process for those listening, but so funny when I like first sat down with Lindsay, I was like, cool, just tell me what to do, like, cool, here's what I'm looking for. Here's where I am. Here's where I want to go. Let's map out a plan. And of course you were like, okay, we just need to like take a step back here. Anyway, the voices that you were referring to. Yes, there are voices. There are voices for sure. Anyone, I think, when you're talking about those in between moments as well, I think we all get these moments where we're like, some days you burst out of bed, you're ready to go, like some sort of motivation comes over you or momentum, whatever it may be. Or let's say you get a really positive phone call or email and you're like, I'm on top of the world. And then that like, at least for me, like drives me to do more stuff and do more outreach or like think about an idea in a new way and come up with something creative that I wasn't thinking about before. Like it really drives you, but that doesn't happen every day. It's just not reality. So those in between moments, I think to be able to have some tools to come back to, I think when you were, at least for me, being in this point in my career when I'm not junior, I'm like senior enough that I have enough to have a foundation of like, oh, I know how to do X, Y, and Z, or like I have enough experience to do X, Y, and Z, that like leaning on that and feeling confident in what you've already done enough to like propel you forward. I mean, it's not a magic trick. It doesn't work 24 hours a day, but it really, really, really helped me come from a place of possibility much more often than not.
What are some of the greatest tools, either now reflecting a couple years in, that you continue to return to or have been like some of your biggest crutches through the
Oh,
process?
I mean,
Uh,
it took practice, but
yes.
putting a name to the voices was a big thing. And so, I mean, people who are listening will understand when they speak to you on a deeper level, because I don't want to just keep saying voices. Like it sounds a
Well,
little
why
odd.
don't I give a little context of it and then you share your
Please.
experience of it, okay?
Okay,
So
please.
for those who maybe aren't familiar with Julie's talking about voices in her head, a big piece of work or tool I build with the leaders I work with, the work I've done with myself is personifying and understanding and identifying the voices of self-doubt, of judgment, the ones that are not always very productive, ones that can be very much disguised as being helpful or trying to keep us safe, but end up being self-sabotaging. So they could be saboteurs. If you're into parts work through therapy, it could be your parts. There's a lot of different like gremlins, like there's a lot of different voices and names and whatever. Schools of thought out there around it. I kind of vary depending on what resonates with the leader that I'm working with. But most often, I think we talked a lot from saboteur perspective. I think what's really important is not to see them as like the enemy or that they're not good for you, because at one point these voices were useful. They often develop as a survival mechanism to help you through really difficult moments starting young. But the thing is, as you get older and you gain more wisdom and you gain more perspective and your life is shifting, they go from being something that you need to rely on to something that's actually getting in your way. But so it's about understanding them, realizing they're not you, they're a part of you, but they're not really truly you. They have a different motivation. They see you as a small kid that still needs the protection, and they can come forward as pleasing behaviors, as trying to control, being perfectionist, hypervigilant. There's a lot of different faces that they can have. And it is more often than not one of the most powerful tools to build when navigating career, sticky, tricky transitional moments, because they are very loud, and we can often think that they are right, and we don't take the time to challenge them and understand them and choose something different.
And that's why you're the coach.
And I spend a lot of time with these guys and a lot of time, and but it is really powerful work. So tell us what it was like for you and how that was most helpful for you and still is.
It was life-changing because those voices, and for me, it's a lot of negative self-talk,
Mhm.
because in my specific life, I have a wonderful support system. Friends, family, I have a husband who's wonderful. Like, they all encourage me. So it was really from within. Like, it was very much from within. And so that's what I really needed to work on the most, was the self-doubt, the negative self-talk. And I still, it doesn't just go away, but it takes practice to understand that those voices, like you said, come from your survival instincts, whatever your upbringing was, and in whatever way they take shape, because it's different for everyone. They're not you. They're not you talking. They're those survival instincts talking. And so once I finally got it through my head and practiced that and understood that, like, you can acknowledge those thoughts,
Mhm.
but you don't have to listen to those thoughts, that was critical for me to understand how I can move past them.
Yeah. And it's when I'm working through this with clients, like it's important to realize, and I know we had this discussion too, like it doesn't change overnight. Like these are very deeply ingrained thought patterns, beliefs, habitual, like they're habits in how your brain works and how you like trigger response. And so you can't just expect like, oh, now I realize that that's the pleaser that keeps having me, you know, not stand up for myself, or having always saying yes to the extra work and getting burned out, or always letting the client yell at me, whatever the reason is. Like there's a million different things, right? You have to first have awareness and presence to know what it is, to start to name it, to start to realize and separate yourself from it, start to become aware of like when it shows up, what triggers it, what does it sound like, because they are sneaky as hell. And so even after you start to like understand them, they will appear in different ways, or they change shapes, because as you start to do different things, you enter a more comfortable place. There's still going to be other fears and insecurities and judgments and things that will come up in new ways. So being really patient with yourself and realizing that you're actually habit changing, like you're actually forming new habits in the way that your brain is operating under a lot of stress and tension and like really difficult moments. So I think that's what I was really impressed with you, was because you were so consistent in your practice of it, that like I remember we were on a walk and talk, maybe it was like a year and a half ago or something, and we were catching up on things, and I remember you bringing up on your own and being like, I still like here, like I'm still catching these voices, this is what it sounds like, but here's what I'm doing, and you like walked me through your process of like what you say differently, and I was like, hell yeah, she's like doing the work. But it's like you have to do it all like consistently. You can't just tap out, because they'll take control.
Listen, you tell me to do an assignment, I'm gonna do my homework. Like, that's just how I operate.
A plus.
The A plus. So yeah.
So what are the voices like now?
They're a lot calmer now. I would say, like, in a more broad goals kind of way, like, when I'm thinking about my goals and, like, more long-term sorts of things, I think they're much quieter, but I think they come up the most in the moment, which I think we named that, like, the tornado, I think, because I have 2 sort of ways of operating, and one of those negative thought patterns that operates for me is, like, in the moment, it sort of feels like all the papers on the desk are being thrown off, and I can't make the pile neat again. Like, I sort of get a little scrambled, if you will, and so that sort of pattern still comes up for me more often than
I
the
wanna
other.
intrude, like, what's, like, when that pattern comes up
Mhm.
and, like, the paper's being thrown and, like, you get that feeling. 2 questions if you're open to sharing. One is, like, what does that feel like in your body? Like, how do you know, like, that that's happening, either in your body or what goes on in your mind? And then how do you now respond?
Sure. So what happens in my body is I get a pit in my stomach for sure. Like I'm very much a gut feeling person, not gut feeling like instincts, but more like physically. I
Mhm.
feel things in my tummy. So that happens. And also I can't think straight. And then I panic because I can't think straight. Right.
Yes.
So what I do is, first of all, if I'm at my desk, which is usually when this happens, I walk away. Like I go outside. I am in LA, so I'm often able to go outside. So I go outside, I take 5 minutes, I look at something else, like, or I flip through a magazine, like do something else with my
Yeah.
brain. And then
Yep.
I come back to it. That usually helps me the most. And then we also did a lot of work on feeling present, literally. What are you smelling? What are you feeling? What are you know, what are you
Hearing.
touching? What are you hearing? Kind of thing. So that kind of gets me back in the moment too. So those are like 2 of my tricks for sure. And some, I would say when this happens, which is not too often, but like professional wise, let's say, sometimes this can happen if I get, let's say, client feedback that I don't really, it's not happy, right? Because that happens
I mean,
sometimes
with
where like
dysregulating?
it happens like, "Hey, I thought I was gonna get this," or like, "I'm not happy with this," or like, "Can we beef up this idea?" or whatever it is. If it's like negative in any way, sometimes I'm like, "Uh-oh," and then never wanna respond to it right away because truthfully, every single time I leave and come back, I completely reframe it in my head, and I feel like it's much more actionable for me to like make those changes, make those edits, make those people happy.
What you're saying, like, what you're speaking to is really important, and I'm gonna double click into it, and, like, the science behind it, which is, like, 2 things. First is, like, you're choosing to pause so you can respond versus react, and I think what happens a lot, especially in the workplace, especially in coming from an industry that we do in advertising, is that, like, things can feel extremely reactive versus responsive, and very emotional and feeling like you have to be doing everything now, now, now. And I think that's something that comes with wisdom and experience in your career and in the industry is like how to learn and remember to take that pause to give yourself that chance to like let your mind reset. But from like a saboteur, like habit process we were talking about perspective, is like things you said are so critical in the process because you're able to pause enough to recognize a name like, okay, I'm having this reaction, which I know, like, this isn't the first time this has happened. Like, this is something that is not productive. I'm not in the driver's seat. The tornado has taken over. And if I continue to act and take actions and respond or react from the place of tornado in the driver's seat, then I'm probably not going to like the outcome and it's not healthy for me. It's not good for me. I know that's not right anymore. I've outgrown that response. So you pause, you get up, and when you focus on something different, like hearing, seeing, smelling, touching, even just go look at something else, have a different conversation, you are actually resetting your like neural pathways and like giving your brain the chance to stop walking down that path and choosing something different. And you can start to regulate yourself a little bit, which then is going to change your ability and actually give you the chance to be like, wait, what's actually true now? How do I, Julie, as the leader, like as a regulated and in driver's seat person, how do I want to respond to this versus letting the tornado act? So it's a
Yeah.
lot of regulation and taking back self control.
Yeah. And like doing these reps over the past few years too, the agency partners that I mean, I mostly my freelance work is being like the missing piece to an agency team. So I work with agencies more often than not. The agency that I work with the most currently, I mean, they have said to me like, "Oh, you act like you've seen this episode before, like, no matter how the presentation goes or the deck is received or whatever. And so, yeah, I think that doing those reps has given me, like, really the understanding that I do have I have the experience, like, there's no reason to have an emotional response to things when I know that the outcome is going to end up being positive. Like, obviously, we're gonna put our heads together, do what we can with the work, make it succeed, make everybody happy, hopefully have an impact on culture in some way and move forward.
What I notice also in that is there's like an air of not only confidence but compassion of like, okay, like knowing like, okay, this is happening again. This is never easy, but I have done this before. I've done harder things. We will figure it out and it will be okay. It's like a reassurance of like, and that's actually one of the tools that I will teach clients or work with folks or I use myself when you are dysregulated or overtaken by a saboteur is like having a moment of practiced self-compassion and reassurance and just like showing up for yourself, whether it's like a hand on the heart or just being like you're doing the best you can or you're going to work through this or you are smart and capable or you are creative or you are supported, like whatever it is, which for a lot of people is like a little cringy to think about doing that, but it actually like scientifically really does work. And because sometimes you just need a little bit of boost. And in those hard moments when you have your own voice in your head telling you worst case scenario, when you're able to talk back from a different place, in a place of confidence, reassurance, of wisdom, of learned real experience, of real data versus a saboteur usually is speaking from nothing that is actually data proven. It's just all hypothetical, like worst case scenarios. You're able to make that shift a lot faster.
Absolutely agree.
So Jules, like I'm curious, like one thing I'm most interested in, I think would be interesting for other folks here too, is like how has your perspective and wisdom changed, whether using these tools, like navigating these moments or just like navigating your career in general, now being like a freelance working in an agency being versus a full-time employee on a team at an agency?
Well, I mean, I'll be really honest and say working as a solo person and not contributing to a company's culture necessarily as much as I was before has given me honestly the freedom to explore that and have time for that because I have been always been someone who like really try contribute and like lift a culture up within a company. Like I really love to be a team player. I really love to make people feel welcome and comfortable and be a person who is in a supportive creative environment so that I also feel supported. Like I just golden rule, in work culture like more often than not. And so it was a really odd transition to not have that be part of my work. And so, of course, I do that with teams that I join temporarily. If it's a project based, let's say, like I, of course, want to like come in with a positive attitude, make the client feel comfortable, whether that's the client that we are creating for or the agency that I'm working within. Like that's a huge piece of the work too. But to really make an impact in company culture takes more time than I thought. And
Well,
so freeing up
yeah.
that space was like a big thing for me that I wasn't expecting.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, really just very, very much that. Also, it really gave me an understanding and window into other company cultures. Because when you're with one place for however long, you learn to operate in that framework. And so it's been really fun actually being a guest star and like sort of seeing how others operate and just in little ways. And it's fun.
Because interesting, because like as you were talking initially about this, like I was thinking from the perspective of like I can only have so much influence because I'm like brought in on certain projects, certain team for a certain amount of time, and I only have a certain amount of hours. So like your sphere of influence is smaller, but also the capacity to do it is smaller because you only have so many hours and your role is limited and you don't know how long you'll be there. Yeah, every contract is different, right? But then to hear you say, oh, I didn't realize that took a lot of capacity, meaning how I understand that is that it took a lot of work for you to invest into the company as like a culture shifter, as like as a pillar of the culture, but you don't do that anymore because it's not necessarily part of your success in your role, nor really an access in your role.
It's almost flipped because I feel like I do bring it in attitude.
Huh?
This is gonna sound really woo-woo, okay? But because it comes from within, I think now more so for me, and, like, I feel like I have more of a ground to stand on within myself. Hopefully, that is seen in the processes that I offer, the output, the thinking that goes behind my ideas, whatever it is. So I hope that that work that I've done within has made my work better and therefore been a contribution that would have been different a few years ago.
Start like what that brings up for me is you have a lot more time like invested in your own brand and like who you and how you are showing up because of a lot of the work that you've talked about that you've done and that you've had to do to like be in this role versus more on a different type of I'm gonna use this word, I don't know if this is how you would use word, but like more of like autopilot of like doing the same thing on the same places. Like when you start going freelance, you make a 180 change, like it's like everything is very different the way you have to lead yourself in the way you're managing yourself every day. But like when you now walk in there, you're able to have feels like almost more agency and more being more deliberate because you're constantly getting the experience over and over again of I'm showing up as the outsider coming on in. I want to make my impression. How am I going to show up to this team? So it's like I feel like when you're at the same agency for a long time in the same role, surrounded by a lot of the same people, you don't always get that type of perspective or opportunity to kind of not reinvent, but like really be in control of your perception.
It's true. I mean, and I think other people can probably relate to this, and I don't think that it's been, like, as dramatic as it sounds. I think it's subtle, but yeah, I do think that, like, when you're in a company long enough, there's certainly a chance that people see you in a certain way, and, like, I wouldn't say breaking out of that, but sort of growing past that, what your capacity was, let's say, a few years ago, I think can be sometimes difficult for folks to see
Yeah.
because they may see you as that someone who was a couple of years ago. But I don't know, but it's so nuanced, like but at the same time, like, it's not like I wasn't given promotions and such, like, I was. So it's I don't know, it's like a subtle thing, I
Let me
think.
build on that for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been reflecting around this of like kind of this idea, like what I thought when we talked a bit about this topic a few weeks ago, just by chance, that I thought was really interesting. Like you talked about this idea of kind of like shedding different identities as you've been transitioning from full time to freelance. And I think what can happen, and that you don't have to be an agency role to relate to this. I think it's being any company, full time, any job, is that you get labeled as like you get especially if you are a high performer and you get known for something. Like I was known for being like the fixer, like they with young talent when they worked under bad managers, like I was like the mentor or the manager that they'd be put under to like fix these baby birds. I was also like a big culture influencer and like or whatever, like a pillar of culture, like somebody that represented the agency culture. And, like there were just certain things that I was known for that I think we can get known for that can be really useful in your career to get you promotion, to get you access, to get you a perception of get certain opportunities or put on certain tracks. But that can also work in your detriment because some people don't get then the same opportunity, the same exposure, the same, oh, I see your potential because of you're known for these things and we value these things immensely here. Or one last bit on that is like you could be known for something, then get passed up for other opportunities because they don't see you as capable because you are seen as an great at execution and process, but not good at strategy. You're not very strategic. So then it can end up hindering growth as much as it can be an unlock of exposure, opportunity of promotion.
It's so
It's
interesting.
it's interesting. What of that resonates with your experience or what you observed?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat, but also, like, I'm not in leadership's head, So, also, like, I think I would never wanna make assumptions, too. All you have is your own reactions and experiences, so I think it's hard to say only because like, you don't really know what they're saying about you behind closed doors either.
That's so
Unless
true.
you have a very transparent leadership, like, which is great, and I've had that, and that's wonderful because 'cause I'm, like, all about feedback. I had a job many years ago that, like, really, like, went over-indexed on feedback, and it, like, changed my life for the better, which I think is wonderful. But, yeah, you don't really always know
You
either.
don't, but you can get glimpses
Yeah.
by some of the things I mentioned, like what opportunities are given to you, what
Yeah.
accounts do you get put on, or projects that they see you in. Like, because being somebody who really was a culture driver, where you brought into different rooms to give perspective, to be a face of the agency that others didn't, uh, and how was was that something that was really useful in your career? But at some point, like, it can also question authenticity when you're having to continue to show up and be something that you've been labeled as, or like, I'm valued for being represent these values of the agency, to represent this culture. But
Mm.
what if that actually doesn't align with you anymore, or there are times when you don't want to be that, but feel obligated because of, like, this is what they expect from me. This is what success is for me here.
Well, here's what's something that I have done in the past.
Okay.
If this now that we're in, like, full work talk, here's something I've done in the past. So, I've been in companies, internal and external marketing, where you just write it down. You get your review. And by the way, you never wait until your review to talk about this stuff. If you're on, if the first time you're talking about stuff in your review, it's too late. Okay. You should be bringing it up with your manager. But let's say, like, I don't even know. Let's say I wanted a promotion and I would say, all right, what's it going to take to get me there? And then we work out those milestones, those goals,
Mhm.
those reps, like, okay, I want you on 5 more X, Y, and Z accounts and let's see how it goes. Whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just sort of making this up. But you keep them honest. Hey, okay, I've done this thing. I've done these 3 things. Now I've done these 5 things. So what are we thinking here? You know?
Mhm.
So if you have a plan, I think that you make together, I think that's has a much more tangible potential outcome than just, I think I deserve X. It's like,
And it also, yes, 100 times over. For first off, it creates accountability both ways. If you're able to create a plan with your manager of what growth looks like, or how to get to the level you want, to get the experience you want, the opportunities you want, then first off, it kind of combats that pigeonholing I was speaking to, because you're kind of saying, I see now I've already mastered process. I'm great at this. I keep getting great feedback on it. However, I'm also hearing and seeing like I'm being passed up for things around strategy. That's something I want to work on. I want to be great at the strategy. Let's create a plan for that. So then you're creating accountability of your with your manager too, that because in feedback, goals and these plans, accountability has to be both sides. Accountable for the employee who is asked to, like, who's working towards that objective, but also for the manager who's doing their part and being transparent and helping give them the opportunities to. So I think bringing that up is a really great point, because it that is like the way out of feeling like you get stuck into certain roles or titles or certain identities,
yeah.
because you just, through transparent conversations and strong feedback conversations, you're able to start to shift the conversation and shift the opportunities, hopefully, if you have a good
Yeah.
manager.
I'm also, though, like, quite empathetic to leadership because in a company that's not super large, let's say, you don't know, like, they're working the numbers back there and you don't actually know? So I also I also empathize too. Yeah. But when you're freelance, you have to do that for yourself, which has been, like, different for me too.
So, okay, how has that been different? One, and then going back to something I named earlier, if you have an answer for this, what identity do you think you had to shed, like, as freelance now? And is there like a new identity you feel like you're forming or like stepping into?
That I had. I think I once had, this was, like, years ago. But I think I once had an identity of, like, this was so long ago. I had a manager who was like, "You're overwhelmed."
Okay, this is good. Yes.
Like, I had too much on, I was saying yes to everything that people asked of me, and I was working on a team of writers, and I was their editor, and it was a fantastic job, I loved it, and I was saying yes to everything, every meeting, 'cause I wanted to be involved, like, I wanted to get in there, and I was really getting in there, and he pulled me aside and he was like, "Cool, so you're only allowed to do 3 things this week, okay?" 'Cause he could tell that I was overwhelmed, and so I think he helped me shed that actually, so, like, that manager was wonderful for me because he was
Wow.
really able to see what I wasn't able to see on the floor and, like, truly pulled me aside and was like, "We need to talk right now." And so that's something that I didn't realize I was doing, and so perhaps I don't know, perhaps once it was shown to me, maybe I absorbed that and didn't realize that.
There's actually an interesting parallel as you're talking about that to even like the saboteurs we're talking about earlier, because it's like there are like these invisible forces or motivators and like beliefs, and they feel just part of us until somebody holds it up in front of us, whether it's a coach, whether it's yourself, whether it's a manager, whether it's a peer, a partner, whatever, and you name it. And you're like, "Oh, this overwhelm is coming from overcommitting." Okay. Actually, self restraint leads to success.
Yeah,
Okay, and I'm being perceived as someone who is, like, saying yes, but maybe that's getting in the way of me being seen as dependable or, because it could get in the way of your capacity. Your
yeah,
capacity could get in the way of all the things you're committing to.
yeah.
What a gift that manager gave you with that.
It was a huge gift, but at the same time, when you're at an agency, that doesn't exist. You don't
No.
get to of course you say yes to everything. Like, you say yes to everything, and everything has to be done yesterday, so it's like
I know the culture doesn't lend itself to those type of boundaries all the time. Especially, like, I don't know, maybe things are changing with newer generations 'cause I feel like they have different types of boundaries of themselves that they exercise, but it is very much a game growing up an agency of the yes man and, like, showing your capacity and speed, like, it's a lot of things that can build unproductive habits that can lead to burnout, to overwhelm, to consistent questioning, "Am I doing enough?" When things slow down, you're like, "But I'm not busy." But you're like, "Well, this is actually how it's just normal." But to us, it feels like failing or not doing enough. But the problem is, and maybe you're experiencing this now managing freelance as you talked about, like you're in a more senior level, that those type of habits, those type of behaviors actually hinder success. And I think it's super true in most careers, especially in advertising, that like what enabled success that got you there is not necessarily the same thing that's going to unlock greater success and growth moving forward. So like, you know, speed, how much you can get done, how quick you are, how much like all the details that you prove a lot early on that would get you noticed, but then it flips suddenly and you need to have different skill sets, different awarenesses, and different type of leadership that will allow you to actually continue to grow in the agency setting.
I mean, in fairness, I'm still a yes man, but I really love the work, like, I
Yeah.
really like it, even when this happens to me every time when I am briefed on something new and my saboteurs come in and they're like, "You think you have new ideas? Like, that's hilarious." Happens every time, and then I have to sit now I know I have to sit and wait, do all the research, just do some bad writing, just get all the stuff out, and then it always comes.
It
Always
always comes.
comes. But, yeah, I'm still very much a yes man because, like I said, I like to work, but at the same time, I don't know, perhaps my approach is different than it once was, less, um, outward panic, perhaps, more like a knowing positivity. Like, I really always try to be positive because we're not moving mountains here, But, like, we're lucky to be able to like, I feel very lucky to be able to do this work and have fun with it. So, I just wanna say yes to things. But it's funny, like go ahead.
Well, I just want to name that that's coming from different places. Like, is that what you were going to say? Is that what but
I wanna
no,
hear what
yep.
you have to say. I wanna hear what you have to say.
But like, it feels like the first yes man was like, it sounded like you did love the work and you love what you were doing, but it felt like I get like a little bit of pleasing energy out of that. Like I want to say yes to everybody and prove myself and I want to like do and be involved in as many things as I can, like almost coming from a bit of scarcity. And now the second yes man of like, I say yes because I love the work, then it comes from, and the more you said, it comes from gratitude. It comes from excitement. It comes from the joy of the challenge, to like continuing to prove yourself that I will get to that idea. And like you said, you have more new tools now. So you don't, you're not operating from, to go back from the beginning, from a place of fear when these new projects are hitting your desk. You're like saying yes, but knowing there's a lot of possibility of what could this be? What can I create?
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't come from a place of panic. I definitely come from a place of or fear, what I'm gonna call panic. No, I don't panic after a brief. No. I definitely come from a place of positivity, and to be honest, I've been hired in roles as more senior than I was as a full-timer. So, there
What
you
has been
go.
like, there you go, folks. You heard it here. It's possible. What has been like your greatest growth and like leadership, like self leadership growth lesson? It's coming out really weird. But like what in the last 2 years in being freelance?
This is this might sound general, but really trusting myself, and I've always known that I'm a person who needs to be prepared, and that's just more and more the case. It doesn't really matter how many reps I've gotten or how many projects I've been on or how many CEOs or CMOs I've talked to, like, none of that matters because I just don't wing it. I just don't. Like, in order for me to wing it, I need to be prepared, if that makes sense. So I think that's been like very crystallized for me in that I need to prepare and go over things before I speak to someone in order to go off script.
I understand that completely. I'm very similar, but what I hear in that is like learning to trust yourself more, but also knowing yourself more so you know how to set yourself up for success
Yeah, exactly.
and letting yourself continue to lead from that place of gratitude and like endless positivity and not panic and not scarcity and not, letting the saboteurs take over.
Yeah, and now that you're saying that, I feel like maybe I have been given the space or I've given myself the space to not be influenced by others' processes too.
Mm, okay.
Because people operate in different ways with, with similar outcomes. I mean, we all get to different certainly if you're a creative person and even if you're, I don't know, an engineer, I'm sure there are different ways people do things and get it done. And so I think perhaps maybe being so close to other folks and seeing their processes, maybe it was giving me influence in a way I wasn't aware of. Many times in good ways, because I want to learn from others and see like what kind of brains they have. Like I really enjoy that team feeling, but maybe it has given me the space to be like, this is how my brain works and I can best contribute to the team this way.
And also, like, I think it then gives you more, I wonder, you tell me, like, a bit more agency too, and since you have like a wider breadth of experience and different processes and different exposure, you're able, like, you have such talk about, like, a different type of tool set, like, now with all of that experience, so when you're walking into things, do you feel like you are more equipped to either offer different things up or more flexible to different approaches because you've had such, like, wider experiences than being on, like, one team, one agency?
Sure. Yeah. Like once I get to know an agency's process and they're like, here's where you fit in, I'm like, okay, I got it. Like I can pretty much wrap my head around it. Yeah. I mean, there are certainly agencies that work in different ways, but it's not too different,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, God, I'm always learning new things that other agencies do that I haven't been exposed to. Sure.
And what has been your favorite? Like, what's like the best? What has, okay, now I want to say that differently. What has surprised you the most in like a positive way about going freelance? And what do you miss about full time agency life?
Ooh, what has surprised me the most? Maybe myself.
Tell me more. What
I
does
think
that
I've
mean to you?
surprised myself more than I thought, more than I expected that, I think when you have a certain network that you're used to communicating with and like these are your agency folks and stuff, it's hard to see past that. And the fact that I've been able to build a network of connections and stay in touch with people and stuff like that as a single entity that is not connected to an agency, that has been surprising. Certainly, like my past experiences helped move that along, like, you know, 100%. Like I've been very, very fortunate to work with the agencies that I have and companies that I have, and I love them for it. But I would say What was the second piece of the question?
Okay, what surprised you most yourself? Like, also, I just want to acknowledge, like, you're killing it. And I remember 2 years ago, we talked and it was like, okay, like, I need to get, portfolio done. They need to reach out to these people. Like, it was like very much starting, like, figuring out how am I going to do this? Like, keep yourself accountable to get off the ground. And like, it's very intimidating. I remember when you got some of your first jobs. And now it's like, I message you, "How are you doing?" You're like, "I'm busy, but I can't complain." And you're getting rehired and you're being able to be choosy with these, like, incredible opportunities you're getting. So anyways, I just wanna acknowledge that because you're doing such a great job and you should. I'm happy to hear you say you're surprised by yourself, but I'm not surprised in the least because I always knew you would be just flourishing. So, I want to acknowledge you there.
Cleanse.
But the
Thanks.
second part of the question was, what do you miss about agency life or being, like, a full-time corporate employee?
Oh, being the team, for sure.
Yeah, always,
For
right? Your team.
sure.
Yeah, totally.
Which is so funny because I think when I first, uh, became freelance, I would say I tell folks who are, like, thinking about it, it took me, like, a good 2, 3 months to even unwind from the pace of that and the nervous system reactions to that. But, yeah, I do miss having that camaraderie.
Mhm.
I am a very extroverted person, so, yeah, I really, like, get that from others.
Yeah, you and me both. I miss it. I miss being part of a team, leading a team. I miss solving creative problems together. I
Mhm.
miss coming together based on crazy experiences and clients and crazy stuff that happens and all the inside jokes and all the fun things.
For
But
sure.
it's why I love being able to work with leaders like you, people who are in the industry, adjacent to the industry, who get it. And I'm like, oh, I'm still in it, just in a way that hopefully for you aligns so much more to purpose and impact and joy and, you know, being able to like lead your work and your life in a way that's most cohesive for you.
So we're figuring it out together, you
We're
and me.
just we're just figuring it out day by day. Jules, what are there any other tools that you want folks like that you want to reflect on that have been helping you that we haven't talked about already?
I mean, a really simple one, but having a planner, a physical planner has been big for me.
Why?
Because when you're now granted, when I'm on a project, certainly I have meetings that I can anchor my day to, but just setting my brain up for success in the morning for me is very tactile. And I literally will write out the 3 things I need to get done today, back to that manager. 3 things I need to get done today, which are like priority. And then I know the priorities based on the team's needs and like making sure that I'm, in constant communication with the team. But then I will schedule out what I'm doing today. Like, after this, I have scheduled a walk,
Mhm. Good.
okay?
I remember always going to the ocean and, like, sitting by the ocean as you were, like, working your way through everything. It's important to, like, create those moments for yourself.
Yeah, so, like, moments of work or exercise or running errands or whatever, it really helps me to stay organized for myself when I don't have an account person to essentially help me do that. It's true, though, like, you are at the behest of your account person and they work hard at it, like they work hard at it to make sure we
Yes,
hit those milestones. And so I have
we
to do it for
do.
myself. What?
That's I said, "Yes, we do." I mean, that was me. We worked so hard.
Mhm.
And I think so physical planner, but even that just, like, being in control of your day and being intentional with your day. And I think in blocking certain times that balances the work you need to do, prioritizing the most important things to do today. I do the same thing. What are the non-negotiable? What's, like, the most important thing first? Get that done. And then similarly, scheduling out workout time, walk time, catch up with Jules time, you know?
But if I put it on my Google Calendar, it doesn't take. I have to have
Interesting.
it on physical paper. I don't know what it is.
I'm impressed with that. Okay. So how do folks like listening to your confidence, your positivity, your skill, your experience? How do people work with you if they want to work from you, learn more from you, invite you onto their teams, connect with you? How can folks do that?
You can check out my work at ecc.llc. And my email address is right there at the bottom in giant letters, but I can tell you right now it is Julie at ecc.llc. And yeah, if you want to check out my Instagram too, why not? We're here. It is LA woman underscore. LA woman underscore.
LA woman. And follow along because you have like the best fashion tips and best fashion little. I'm like, man, she's so cool. I could never be that cool, especially with your bag charms right now. You're killing it.
Whatever. I have fun with it. I have fun with it. Yeah, it's my little outlet.
Well, thanks, Jules, for getting unfiltered with us today. It means so much to me, and your experience, your wisdom, your insight, your positivity is just radiating. So, thank you so much for everything. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're the absolute best.
All right, we'll see you soon. Bye now.